I did a short, brief presentation of you in order to concentrate and to utilize time that we have in disposal. We have around 40 minutes for discussion. And I would like to start with Mr. Jagxhiu from very general level to trying to be as specific as possible. My general question goes in the direction of how the current government sees the digital transformation of public sector. I would quote Prime Minister Kutia yesterday said that digitalization is one of the key objectives in our government program. The new digital agenda will be one of the flagships of our new development strategy. This is a very well said statement, but we are eager to know more, so can you please shed some more light into the vision of the government on digital transformation of the public sector?
Hello? Okay, much better. So thank you, Durim, for having me in this panel. I'm very happy to speak about the digital transformation process within the government. So I would say e-government is the centerpiece of our engagement in digital transformation within the government of Kosovo. And there, our aim is to use electronic services and the e-government to increase transparency and accountability of our government, and at the end of the day, to improve the services for our citizens and for our businesses. The aim is to go with a digital transformation process, which will cover all the sectors of the government, with the aim of improving the services in the public administration, health sector, education sector, justice, and all the other sectors within the government. The digital transformation process and the e-government are closely related with the public administration reform. So we cannot really speak about, I would say, digitalization without speaking about improvement of processes within the government. And that's a lot what about the digital transformation is about. So we have to transform the processes, we have to transform the organizations within the government in order to be able to, I would say, gain the maximum benefit from the digitalization process. So in that aspect, we are defining, I would say, the key principles of how we want to have our e-government function. Some of those key principles are the once-only principle. So the idea is once the citizen provides a certain information to the government should never ask for the same information again, because the government already has that information. Again, it's easy to say, but in the background, there are things that need to happen in order to be able to adhere to that principle. Another important principle is, for example, personalization. So the idea is that we don't provide, one-size-fits-all services and impose the same service to everybody, but to allow the users of the systems to provide their preferences and, in a way, personalize their experience, what kind of service they want to get from the government. Another important principle has to do with proactive services. Again, this is a bit more advanced because we have to go step by step, but the idea is today when we imagine a good service, we think about doing something in the minimum number of clicks. So we apply for something and we get a service as efficiently as possible. But the idea is that there are services that actually citizens should not apply at all for. So if they fulfill certain criteria, they should be able to get the service proactively. So the system should be able to, in a way, provide the service without the need somebody to go through some application process. Another important principle is digital by default. So we need to design the processes within our institutions so that we keep in mind that our initial and final aim is to have digital services. So they have to be prepared in such a way that digital is the default. And the most important one, I think, is the user centricity, because it, I would say, encompasses and I would say summarizes all of these which I already mentioned. So at the end of the day, the idea is to design the processes and the services in the way to be seen efficient and effective from the user's perspective, from the citizen's perspective. Because right now, the way things are, and those are not only, I would say, in our government, but many other governments have faced the same issue, because the government, the starting points how the government sees services is from, you know, the structures inside the government. So you have the ministries, you have the agencies, each of them are some kind of a silo, they have their own services, but that's not the way the users, the citizens would like to see services. They would like to see it from the perspective of life events. So if, for example, a child is born, that's a life event for the citizen. If a citizen changes an address, that's a life event. If he or she opens a business, that's a life event. So all the services should have a starting point, the life event that the citizen or business is going through. So based on those principles, we need to build our systems, e-government systems, registries. Of course, we have quite a few of registries. We don't have to start from scratch, but we need to make sure that we have some principles about the systems which will be part of an e-government structure. So one of the important principles is the interoperability one, and it has to do with the previous thing which I mentioned, which has to do with once only principle, meaning that if the systems communicate between each other, then we will be able to attain a once-only goal, because once the government gets a certain information, then regardless of what kind of other service is needed by the citizen, because he has already provided a certain information, the government system should be aware of that information. Another important thing which we are trying to push is having a single portal for the services of citizens and businesses. What I found when I started my work in the government a few months ago is that there is tendency for various institutions to create their own portals of services. Again, it's not bad that institutions want to provide services, but the idea is we are pushing a government approach that at the end of the day the citizens should see us as one government. So that's why we're trying to concentrate all the services within the Ecosova portal. Another thing which I would like to mention is electronic identification. I will talk a bit more about it, but that's a very important aspect which we will be working on. The project will be starting soon. And that should also be by default. We should not invent various authentication services within the government, but there will be a unique way of authenticating the citizens and businesses, and that should be by default for all systems who join the e-government ecosystem.
But before going to electronic signature and identification, most important driving factors of digital transformation are political support, which without doubt now we learned that there is political willingness to undergo this transformation process. But besides political support and political willingness, you need to have a sufficient budget to implement all these transformation activities. And moreover, you need to have technical know-how within the government to implement this vision of digital transformation. Does the current government have the sufficient budget and internal know-how to push forward this process?
Yeah, those are very good questions. So regarding the budget, of course, like many other projects in the e-government e-government and digital transformation need funds. And that's something we have in mind. Of course, there are a lot of priorities within the government which relate to various areas of, I would say, socio-economic priorities. And of course, since digitalization is one of our priorities, we will make sure that we allocate the needed budget for that area as well. But what I can say is that this will be done in a very planned and structured manner. So we are working on a strategic documents which will produce action plans, and those action plans will have their own projects. So we will be, I would say, strategically budgeting, putting into our budget the key projects related to digitalization. And what I need to emphasize is that the approach of the government, regardless if it's digitalization or any other sector, the approach is that whatever spending we do of taxpayers' money, we'll make sure that it is done responsibly. Talking about the, I would say, the know-how within the government, I would say that, of course, we discussed that yesterday as well. This shortage of skills is a first of all global issue, is a big issue in our country, but especially in the government, because we know that the professionals, when they have a chance to work in the private sector or work for international companies, of course, they would choose for the latter ones. So yes, I would say acquiring talent is quite challenging, and retaining is even more challenging. But that doesn't mean that we have to, give up, because we have to think about the systems we need to build, mechanisms to attract talent to the public sector as well. But of course, it doesn't mean that we will have all the necessary skills within the government to run the digital transformation process. We have to do it in close cooperation with the private sector, with consultants, experts, and also diaspora. We think that we have a pool of people in diaspora which can help us a lot, and we are working on establishing contacts and seeing who can fit in what role in supporting this process.
Now, talking specifically about the law on electronic signature, now already for more than 2 or 3 years, there has been effort to work and complete the legal infrastructure in this aspect. The government has approved the law. We, as a project, has provided technical assistance in developing the sub-legal acts. Concretely speaking, any plan when this law will be approved and implemented? Well,
as the Prime Minister mentioned, we passed it in the government. So now the law is in the parliament. It has passed the first reading. And the second reading, of course, depends from the parliament, but we are expecting it to happen soon. So I believe, if not by the end of this month, then November should be some realistic time to expect that the legislation will become effective. And as you said, we already have, I would say, the secondary legislation pretty much ready. Of course, additional consultations are needed, but we are doing all the, I would say, the background work, so that the moment that the law is ready, we will proceed with the secondary legislation. And the good thing is that apart from the legislative part, we already have the project ready. So we have commitment, we have support from the EU through IPA funds to fund the project. Everything is prepared. All the, I would say, analysis have been made, and everything has been prepared. And I believe very soon the EU will proceed with the procurement process. And of course, it's a complex project. We are not expecting that the implementation will be fast. It's very important that implementation goes, I would say, in a very deliberate way, because there are risks associated. There are countries who have implemented electronic identification, but still were not successful in, I would say, using it in practice. It is very important that the electronic identification is adopted also beyond the government. It's not something that should be seen as something which is related only to e-government. I think the financial, the banking sector has big interest in it, also the telecom providers, but it is open actually for the whole private sector, because it can be utilized for provision of services by everybody. And we as a country will have a tool, we have a mechanism to identify our citizens and businesses. And beyond authentication, there is this very important part which has to do with digital signature, because in the government side, we are really looking forward to it, because it will pave the way for digitalization of many services which today cannot be fully digitalized. Because there are some services which require a physical signature, and because we don't have a mechanism for doing that electronically, the citizens have to go to physically to certain government office. For example, we have some services which are semi-digitalized, or like in the Agency for Registration of Businesses. The initial part of the process, application for opening a company or changing something, can be done electronically. But still, after that process is finished, you still have to print the documents, sign them, and go and hand them over physically. And with the electronic signature, we will be able to digitalize that whole process end to end. So, and beyond that, I would say that the law itself, but also the systems which we are aiming, is to have them eIDAS regulation compliant, which means that those, I would say, identification mechanisms will be able to be used also cross-border within the EU. So that also opens, I think, more opportunities for its usage.
Thank you, Mr. Jagxhiu, for very valuable input. Now let's turn to Mr. Burim from Agency of Information Society. A very successful case of digital transformation of public services, as you know, is the Ecosova platform. Yesterday, Minister Izvanoli argumented that the digitalization enabled faster vaccination of people in Kosovo. Yes. And most likely, he was referring also to Platforma Ecosova. So coming from that institution, can you please give us a very short summary of what Platforma Ecosova consists of, what kind of services are currently offered, and what are the next services that the Ecosova platform plans to offer?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you. As you mentioned, Ecosova is a really successful case, maybe starting from those services, which one you just mentioned, it was the vaccination against COVID. There are more than 1.5 million vaccines administered through Ecosova. This is a good case, and for us, that helping us to have more and more services. Now we have more than 30 other services that providing through Ecosova platform, and the Ecosova platform is the single point where all services should be there, public services that should be provided for citizens. And maybe I should mention some other services, which are property taxes invoice, also is fines by the police, services for grants and subsidies, and this happens for two ministries, Ministry for Regional Development, also for MINT, and this process, I should mention here, it's fully digitalized from first to the end, all the process. After that, we have application for resident permit for foreign citizens. There are some other services in Ministry of Finance, which are application for maternity supplements, applying for children allowance, application for personal allowance subsidy. And there are also two other services which are more information. There are permits and licenses information that we have done for 2 municipalities, which are municipality of Prizren and Lipian. Also, we will continue with other municipalities. And there are other services that we will have in Ecosova platform. Many of them we are working now in that process. Maybe the most important is payment, electronic payment that we will put in Ecosova, and we are working with 3 banks for the moment. It's TEB Bank, Pro Credit Bank, and Raiffeisen Bank who are offering this service for citizens, so citizens can pay everything in Ecosova platform. We are speaking now for a public service that they should pay. Also, other bills they can pay through this. And there are some other services, maybe I will mention just 2 or 3 of them. It's application service for young police officers, and also scholarship for students. Now we are working on those days, they will be published for citizens. So.
What we have experienced in the past is that the creation and setup of the e-platforms is not so challenging, but when it comes to usability, then we face many obstacles, and we have witnessed in the past excellent platforms created, but no usability at all. So does your agency have specific plans in promoting the platform among Kosovo population, specifically among marginalized groups?
Yes. Starting from challenges, when we start Ecosova platform, it was a coincidence that they started during the pandemic time. We start to have many meetings with different institutions, different group of interest, and it wasn't easy because we had some problems. Some of them were in legal aspect, some of them are more bureaucratic, but in the end, we did it. Now we have this platform, and as you can see, it's the best one now in our country that is happening. So during this period of time, we work with all institutions, and now we are having all these services. But what we are doing now, especially with citizens, we have a call center started in our agency. There are more than 10 officials who are working there, and they are helping during all of the time citizens about services that we offer in platform Ecosova. In this aspect, also we have a contracted professional company who is working about marketing more, who is doing all grid lines, videos, marketing in social media, and we are doing this all over the time just to help citizens to have more easy way to use our platform. Maybe the one important thing in the end is to mention that about marginalized groups, we did develop the platform in that way that helps this category to use the platform in the best way. Also, as I mentioned, the call center, our officials are working during all of the time, answering calls and helping citizens to have the best way to have the services for them.
Thank you, Mr. Balaj. Let's turn now to representative of private sector, Mr. Fazliu. You heard yesterday Prime Minister Kurti, also today Mr. Jagxhiu. How would you assess the current ecosystem for digital transformation in private sector? And which are your expectations from the government in terms of facilitating the overall digital transformation process?
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. Yes, I think that a starting point for doing something is a mindset. And I do believe that listening yesterday to the Prime Minister and today to the, I'm calling CTO of the government, Mr. Lulezon, I believe it's a good starting point in order to first knowing what was the future and knowing what needs to be done. Until now, we didn't have, let's say, a role in the government like we do have now, which is pretty important, because we, prime ministers or the politicians, they do not maybe, or they didn't understand the potential of digital transformation or digital services in the past, because I do believe that we could move forward pretty fast. And the entire, let's say, ecosystem built up in Kosovo for the ICT sector has been built through private companies, through STIC, and other, let's say, donors that helped us grow. In order for us to, let's say, to move forward, I think that if what have been said yesterday from the Prime Minister and today from Mr. Lulezon, I believe if those things will be done, we will be in a better place, miles away from where we are now. And this is pretty important that what have been said to be written and then, of course, to put it in action in smaller steps. So all of us in the private sector will know what's the path of digital transformation or, let's say, the digital improvements in society. There are a few things that have been mentioned also previously, but that the ecosystem have been struggled for years, that are digital signature, digital invoicing. Yesterday also Prime Minister mentioned that 2% of the budget in Estonia have been reduced by just doing those two steps. Another thing that needs to be said is that currently we are living in a, let's say, in a wilder ecosystem or competition because of the all companies that come from abroad, and they see great potential for the youngsters to become their potential employees. And saying this means that in the near future, local businesses will not be able to afford the prices in order to make their own digital transformation. Because also local companies, they are all looking, let's say, for the clients abroad in order to pay the bills and to keep their talents in-house. I think that this part should be also something that government should help in order to help local companies grow and keep the talent in-house. And of course, by doing this, they will help also other local businesses to gain services from local IT companies. Otherwise, there will be pretty hard to have a sustainable, smoother, and proper digital transformation in a national level. There are many companies, let's say, outside Pristina that they cannot afford to build up an e-commerce website and, let's say, paying for a CRM or something that will help them to build business based on data. If we cannot provide those services in a level that they can, let's say, they can afford, and they can build up teams who will be part of the digital services, because when you do something, a digital transformation, it's not just the tool, it's also people behind it. You cannot build an e-commerce on a platform who interacts with third parties without having people on the back office, without having proper payment solutions, etc. So this is for me, the key point. It's equal to the let's say, helping local companies or the market to build up the resources, human resources, and to, let's say, to make a shift from traditional professions into the ICT, which, I mean, the government have started with a budget that will help on this process. The other thing is that currently Kosovo is not listed in many service providers around the world, starting from those that are well known, like PayPal or Stripe or something. So it's pretty hard for companies, mainly startups. I do have, as a company, we help, or we support, in fact, we don't help them, we support them, local, let's say, startups or products. One of them is Ambra, let's say, one of a task management tool. They struggled to get payment of subscription because of the Kosovo. So they were forced to open company in the United States in order to make subscription available. So these are some key points that can be, let's say, simple, and in other countries are unseen, but in Kosovo, those makes companies suffer. I do believe that with a proper plan, written plan, in a small action steps, we can achieve more, let's say, in a few months than we did in the past years.
Besides the external factors that you have discussed, there are also a group of internal factors within company that present a barrier to digital transformation. So from your perspective, as a company owner, as a consultant of digital transformation, what are the main barriers that usually block the specific digital transformation of specific company?
Each company has its own, let's say, climate or culture. It depends from the leader how they see the vision of the company, but of course, in different business like traditional ones or those who provide goods that are not related with technology, it's maybe harder to do something in a faster manner. The main thing to do is first to make awareness campaigns to the companies in a national level or in a company levels, so they get to know what digitalization means. It's not something that necessarily will, let's say, have less people in a company by making them quit. But the idea is to create a mindset, shifting the mindset, in fact. You cannot, let's say, achieve an end result or end goal if you are not willing to do that. And if only the leader or only CEO or owner of the company wants to do something, they have to transfer that, let's say, vision, that know-how, that how they're gonna transfer their company with all employees. They have to participate on it. They have to be part of it, and they have to feel that what's happening, it's for their own good. And for this, I mean, we should have maybe kind of group or management company or something who can visit those companies when needed, as a part of, if let's say is a budget from the government for 1,000 companies to digitize their processes, there should be tech companies who can digitize to make the tool, and also the consultants or other companies who will go and speak with owners in a in friendly way to help them understand what's the potential. If you are building something that will minimize the processes, if you are building something that will optimize the entire operations inside the company, what's the benefit of it? And when they see the benefit, they can access the tool and they can use it. Otherwise, tools will be useless. So basically, the main thing to do this, from my point of view, is only mindset. And of course, in some companies might be a lack of let's say, the ages of the employees. If they are, let's say, above 60 or 50 or whatever, they might be, it might be harder for them to engage in tools. But if they have a group of people who are youngsters, who can also share and train the others in the company, it will be easier to do the transformation.
Now going to Zana and picking up on what you said about mindset and cultural shift. The digital transformation in itself is disruptive and requires significant cultural shift. According to your experience, what is in-company culture needed for digital transformation?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. As Arianit mentioned, especially in non-ICT companies, company culture, it has to be innovation. And it's a bit of a problem in non-ICT sector because they are prone not to digitalize, especially older owners or older managers. But still, it should start from the leader. So the leadership should be implementing, or the leadership should put the company to go with the digitalization. We've seen as a company, as an ICT company, we have a product, and we've seen from the pandemic that it was a necessity even for non-ICT businesses to digitalize. What we've seen with this lockdown, for example, our company put out e-commerce platform for all the businesses. And what they are into it, they want to implement it, but then they lack digital skills. because it's not easy digitalizing when you don't know, you don't have proper digital skills. So non-ICT companies, besides digitalization, they have to equip their staff with digital skills, basic digital skills, in order for their business to improve. We've seen in many different companies what they lack is if you want to put out your products in e-commerce, you have to have a good picture of a product, good description. So these are all information that they need to have in order to implement, for example, an e-commerce website. But digital skills, social media plays a crucial part in digitalizing non-ICT companies. So they should focus also on digital skills on social media part, on CRM, and on other different softwares for companies to run.
I think, Zana, you brought a very important aspect of digital transformation that we frequently try to forget or neglect, and that is the human aspect of the digital transformation. Just recently, I met one of the leading wood processing owner who was ready to invest millions of euros in digital transformation, but one of the main reasons why he did not decide to invest is because he said that the current employees do not possess necessary skills to use the digital tools that I'm ready to invest and buy. So I think this is very important. Just to conclude, Zana, with you, what is the most difficult part of digital transformation for companies?
As I mentioned, digital skills of the staff. So the staff should know more about cybersecurity, and cybersecurity, of course, we know it's a complex theme, but every user, every employee of the company should have basic skills of cybersecurity, so they are safe on the internet. Then they have to have some social media expertise, because everyone is nowadays on social media. Then they also need to have different trainings on different products, different softwares. So when the companies implement a new product or new software, it comes with the training. It comes with the user manual, so they know how to use that system. But in order for digital transformation to happen, digital skills are necessary. What is one proposal for government in this case, because they have agency for employment, and they have VTCs, vocational training centers, throughout Kosovo. There should be a partnership, public-private partnership, especially on these digital skills trainings within agency, within employment agency. This would be easier also for other businesses, for non-ICT businesses I'm talking about. The other problem that we have as IT companies with technical people is that we lack, but these are different measures. But for digital skills for different businesses, it should be done together with the government to implement those trainings in vocal training centers.
Thank you very much. Just before concluding this panel, I would like to bring again the discussion with Mr. Jagxhiu. In terms, you have heard the representatives of the private sector. So they have identified several challenges and requests on what the government should do. Maybe just a brief reflection on what was said by Arianit and Zana, so we can conclude with the panel.
Yes, I mean, this aspect of digital skills always comes back to the table because it's really crucial, and I have to emphasize the fact that digital transformation, regardless if it's in the public sector or private sector, has much less to do with technology and much more to do with people. And yeah, that is what will make or break the whole, I would say, digital transformation process. So in that regards, we are taking some measures, and there are some trainings I mentioned also yesterday. About 3,500 young, I would say, people are being trained in various areas in ICT. We are also using some external funding for that. So the idea is really to create an abundant supply of people which will be able to serve the industry. Also, currently we have, as part of the economic recovery package, a measure which directly addresses the, I would say, the youth employment and youth trainings. So the Ministry of Finance is, I would say, operationalizing this measure in order to fit, to make a best fit for the needs. So any ideas which the private sector has, we are willing to listen. And we've had also some meetings. But at the end of the day, the idea is to come to some kind of, I would say, a common approach to that, because I've met a lot of people from private sector, and it's not a single idea. There are so many ideas. So I believe that we can utilize also ITP. One of the components here is the trainings part, and we need to see what are the mechanisms we can build to address this issue. And I agree that there are two components to it. We are talking about ICT professionals needed for the industry, and we are talking about the digital skills for our citizens, for our teachers, for our doctors. And you know, each of the strategies in the sectors has to address it, but we also have to have a holistic view on this. For example, digitalization in education that we are currently working on as part of our overall education strategy. It has 4 components, but for me the most important one and the most challenging one is the skills part, because in order to be able to roll out the digitalization, which includes digitalization of processes, systems, of the content, it is very important that we have people starting from the schools up to the ministry who will be able to be part of that process, because without having those people, you know, the technology will not solve our problems. So yes, we hear and we see the problem. We are trying to address it. We are looking at various options and various mechanisms to address it, and of course it will be part of the strategies. As I said, there is no sense of having digitalization in education, any kind of strategy, if we don't address the aspect of skills. It's the same for health. If we are looking at digitalization in health, we need to have skills of the people involved within the whole structure. There are other things which were raised, I think, regarding various, I would say, things which have to do with our development as a country, but we are still not present as a country in various platforms. Again, we are aware of that problem, we are trying to address it, and we would welcome cooperation with the private sector, with civil society, because everybody can contribute. For us, we are trying to look at the top-level domain, which is a very important thing, not only for the, usage and, you know, the systems and the portals and all that, but also for the cybersecurity part. And we are looking at the ways, because there are, I would say, a couple of paths. Those are quite challenging, because whatever path we take, at the end of the day, it requires membership in UN, which we currently don't have. So, but we are trying to see if there is some path which we can use and to overcome this, I would say, obstacle we have.
Thank you very much. We have utilized extra 8 minutes, but I guess since we have Mr. Jagxhiu here, and we are all eager to find out more about the governmental plan, so please forgive us for extra 8 minutes. Let me summarize with what is my impression from this discussion, that there are challenges, barriers to digital transformation, but apparently the government has approached the digitalization in a very ambitious way, has defined principles of digital transformation, and we look forward to action plans and implementations. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for your attention.